Hello and welcome to another episode of the Maxi-Geek Show. Today is Friday, May 27th, and this is episode number 20. 20 episodes. Woo! So we are on every Friday, normally at 7 p.m. It's running a little bit later this week, so it's an 8 p.m. start. As always, as you can see in the bottom corner here, we are powered by Rig Gaming. They are kind enough to provide us with some hardware. And that is what I'm wearing on my head now, the lovely HS800 wireless headset. As always, we'll go through, some of the bigger stories of the week, bigger news, and vice versa, before we wrap up with the look ahead in terms of the forecast of what games are coming out over the next 7 days or so. Sometimes we go a little over. But yeah, we're going to get stuck into it. Obviously, today there was a lot of Star Wars related news, so we will be focusing on that in the later half of the show. Before then, though, we're going to talk all things Warner Brothers in Multiversus. So earlier this week, late last week, early this week, I was given access to the alpha for Multiversus, which is the Smash Brothers clone by Warner Brothers Games. I say Smash Brothers clone purely to give everyone a quick sense of what it is. If I said it's just a fighting game, you might think something like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. It's definitely not Mortal Kombat. They already have that realistic, gory fighting. They don't need anything like that again. But this is definitely very much a Smash Brothers clone in terms of, its overall design. So if I just scroll down here, we'll just show it here. There's, four characters on the screen. There are platforms you can jump on. The idea is to build up as much damage as you can to the, other fighters on the screen before you then, send them flying off to the side. Again, very, very much a Smash Brothers thing. The big twist for this one is that it has a heavy focus on cooperative gameplay. Now, when I say cooperative gameplay, I don't mean just playing, in the 2v2 mode. So at the moment, there are 3 modes. There's 1v1, 2v2, and free-for-all. If you play 1v1, you can use some of the, sort of the things, but if it's when you're playing 2v2 that you can do a lot more. So you can see here in the screenshot, you've got Batman, Harley Quinn, Jake the dog, who kind of looks like a horse at the moment, and Arya Stark from Game of Thrones. The big thing, though, you can see here both Superman and Steven from Steven's universe. They are both in, the protective bubbles. That's the thing that Steven's doing. So the way that the 2v2 works is that your character can supplement the abilities of the other person on your team. So in the gameplay I was doing, I was playing as Shaggy for a lot. And then Wonder Woman. Shaggy is more of a brawler. He's an all-round guy. Wonder Woman they describe as a tank. As a tank, she's sort of built to take damage, to take the brunt of things, because she has a shield. It's one of Wonder Woman's many things that she carries with her is a shield. And what you can do is that shield can actually be used to protect the other player. All right. So it's not just a matter of you deflecting an attack. When you activate it, Wonder Woman's shield can actually encompass her and the other character, so you can actually protect the both characters at once. Things like that. But it's not just a protective thing. There's also enhancements to the attacks. So you can actually chain attacks together from, say, Superman with heat vision and Bugs Bunny. So Bugs has an ability where he can burrow into the ground like he does, but your character, so if you're playing with a friend and they're Bugs Bunny and they do this, you can actually, whoever you happen to be, take that same route. So you can actually, follow Bugs through the hole. So there's a lot of this sort of cooperative enhancement across the board. But one of the big things is that your character has basically a tether, is probably the best way to describe it. And the tether lets you basically, lasso somebody and pull them back in should they happen to fall off the edge of the map. So if they get knocked off to the side but they can't quite get back on, you can actually throw out and and pull them back in and say, hey, you can have this extra support by me saying yes, I'm pulling you back into the fight. You can also use it on yourself to pull yourself back up into the fight. It's not necessarily going to be, an advantage over the other teams because they also have it. So every character has this ability. But it's just a very fun way of taking, the basic Super Smash Brothers formula of you play as this person, try to knock another person off the stage, but throwing in a bit more of a cooperative element. Again, if you do play 1v1, it's just, you versus somebody else. And obviously if you play in the free-for-all, it is just, whoever comes out on top. It's obviously still very early on in its what's the word I'm thinking of? In its development. This is only an alpha, so they're doing an open beta in July, so a couple of months away still. Depending on how well this technical alpha goes, which is what we're in, and how well the beta goes, they may aim for a release date later in the year. They may go early next year. We really don't know, but that is interesting, and I sort of want to start off with it because we've seen over the years, we've seen a half a dozen Smash Brothers clones. We had one last year with Nickelodeon characters. That was their second attempt at the Smash Brothers clone, and they fumbled it from a presentation point of view because there's no actual audio from the characters. So you had Nigel Thornberry fighting April O'Neil, and neither of them said anything. So it's just a very weird thing for them to do. Moving on though into the world of Call of Duty, we have a release date and some art. So early this week, over a period of many hours, Activision and Infinity Ward, the developer of this year's Call of Duty entry, realigned some shipping containers at the port of Los Angeles to reveal the big key art for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Now this is not to be confused with the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 from way back in the Xbox 360 era, or the recent remastering of the campaign from that game that hit Xbox One and PlayStation 4. This is a brand new one that's a sequel to the Modern Warfare we got a couple of years ago. So all the reveal is just them pushing a barge up in the water. It lines up with stuff on the dock. There's some big shipping containers with some giant artwork plastered across it. Now we haven't got any confirmed platforms for the game yet. Obviously PC, Xbox Series X and S, PS5 are more than likely going to be the case. But there's nothing yet about it being, releasing on the last gen consoles. There is a fair chance it will, but we just haven't got that confirmation. But as we've seen lately, a lot of games, a number of developers are basically saying, hey, no, we're just going to focus on next gen. That may be the case. We honestly don't know. We are expecting to hear more about the game in June through the various events that are taking place. That's not confirmed yet. We don't know everything that's going on, but that is what talking is saying. We do know, however, that the game is set to release on October 28th for whatever platforms it does release on. So it is very, very cool. The video, as I said, it's not anything fancy. It's just them getting some pieces of art in line with each other. What is interesting is they're actually doing a giveaway, so they're going to be tearing up this piece of art. And I say piece of art because it's massive. So if you're watching the show here, you're seeing the video. They've got 2 shipping containers tall, 3 shipping containers tall, pieces of artwork for the various characters. But sort of the key art, if you will, the main art for the game, that is on the ground and takes up a good 30-40 square meters. So but that big piece of art, that's actually going to be torn up and given away, so people can actually win a piece of that art, giving themselves, not so much a piece of history, but, something that's very special. It's not all that common. We don't know a whole lot of details about the game itself. We know that, Task Force 141. So Captain Price, Soap, Gaz, they're all back again. It's going to continue the story from the first Modern Warfare, the reboot of the series. Beyond that, though, so we don't know much, and we'll have to wait and see for all those details. Moving on to something that we do, know a little bit more about, and that is the Lord of the Rings Gollum. So we're actually knowing that this game was coming for a number of years now. They announced it very, very early on in development. No idea why. They just decided they would. But the Lord of the Rings Gollum is, as the name says, it's about Gollum. It is a stealth survival game. So Gollum is not a fighter. We've seen him, in the movies, in the Peter Jackson adaptation of the books, get into some light brawls. We saw him in The Hobbit, again from Peter Jackson, or if you read the book. We've seen him get into, some scruffs, and scrapes there. But he's not, running out into an army and slaughtering people with a sword. So the unfortunate thing is that when they released the information about the release date, they didn't put out a new trailer. They just said, hey, check out this last one, which is from December last year. So it's not really that up to date on things. But I'll throw it here on play, just so people can see it while I'm talking. The interesting thing is that the game is set to release on September 1st for Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5, PC, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4. Switch owners will have to wait a little bit longer. The game is not expected to release there until later in the year. There isn't a set date or a reason for why it's not coming out with the others. But let's be honest, it's pretty much stock standard at this point. Every time a game is announced for all the platforms, Switch is always left behind for whatever reason. So Data Leak also did a few years ago. They did a series called Six, which is a very hiding in the shadows, sneaking around, trying to do a lot of things to interact with the world to cause chaos, to distract from guards. And then you could actually sneak up behind them and do things. We don't know how this is going to play out. They've got some screenshots here that they've provided as well, so you can see Gollum here in the grass hiding from the guards. It's very, very unique in its visuals. It kind of reminds me a bit of Oblivion, if you remember the Ayleid ruins throughout Tamriel. Sort of has those sort of vibes around. But yeah, we it could be very good. It could be very bad. We sort of just have to wait and see on it. But yeah, that one's coming out on September 1st. The big thing obviously isn't that your Gollum, is that Smeagol will also pop up from time to time, so you will have to make make a deal with Smeagol, or deal with Smeagol, I should say, to ensure that what you're doing isn't going to be the be all to end all for you. Moving on from the iconic Gollum to the iconic Optimus Prime. So early this week, LEGO Australia confirmed that Optimus Prime is coming here on June 1st with the insane price of $260, or $259.95 is what they say. Obviously, it's not as insane as, say the $1,200 Millennium Falcon that, they've done, or the $1,400 Titanic that they released a few years ago. So it's definitely not the most expensive Lego set they've ever built, but it is, an interesting sort of collection nonetheless. The reason why this is very interesting is because the set, once you've constructed it, as you can see here, you get a big Optimus Prime. Let me just show you here. It's a big thing, but he actually does transform. So without having to disassemble the figure, you can transform him from his robot form to his truck form. Now, Lego sets that are, multiple designs in one have been around for years and years and years. We see it, more recently with their Lego Art series. You'll buy like the DC set, and you can make a picture of Batman, a picture of the Joker, or something. I think it was Harley Quinn was the third option. But then if you buy 3 of them, if you buy 2 of them, you can make another piece of art instead. If you buy all 3, buy 3 sets, you can make a massive poster. But if you don't have to buy a Joker set. You would buy the DC art set, and then you could make the one you wanted. We saw it with the Back to the Future car. It was one set, but you had to modify it to put on the bits and pieces to make it the Back to the Future 2 car or the Back to the Future 3 car. This is not that. This is literally one singular build that can then transform back into a truck form. I think it looks great, in the truck form. It's very, very clean, very, very simple. As you can see here with the chest open, there's the Matrix in there. This is heavily inspired by the Transformers movie and the Transformers series from the 80s. So it is definitely a tall piece as well. We do have to wait a little bit, to see how it does shake out in the long run. The only thing that annoys me is the stickers. I'm not a fan of stickers on my Lego. I always feel it's a little bit of a cheat to get it out of things. I understand why, but it just doesn't appeal to me in that sense. Moving on to some Nintendo news. As expected, when some maintenance was announced yesterday, Nintendo have announced 3 new additions coming to Nintendo Switch Online. So available today, Nintendo have added another singular NES title to the mix and 2 more Super Nintendo titles. In the NES title in question is Pinball, which was one of the earliest games I ever played on my NES. So I played the original Mario Brothers and then Pinball many years ago. So I have fond memories of Pinball. It's sadly not all that interesting as far as games go. There is some stuff you can do in it, but it's not exactly in depth. On the Super Nintendo side, there is Congo's Caper, which if you're watching the video, you can see it playing in action. This is a Data East game. The production company is no longer around. It looks fine. It's just another generic platformer that was sort of a dime a dozen back then. And then the other title is Rival Turf. Not Rivals Turf, but Rival Turf. And it is just another side-scrolling brawler, sort of like Streets of Rage, kind of like some of the Turtles games. So it is interesting that they're, bringing those games out. As I said, Pinball is sort of the one that, out of the 3, I'm more excited for because, I played it a lot growing up. I still have the game. It's, I've had it for 30-ish plus years now. That little mini game there is a nightmare. But yeah, so with those games being added, the NES lineup is now over 90, and the Super NES is a little over 65. So, I've said this here before, and I've said it on the Vootcast, which I'm also on. It's honestly getting to the point where Nintendo either need to start putting their big games on here, or they need to think of something else. Because as much fun as Pinball is, it's not a game to convince me to say, hey, I need to subscribe to this service. People may be fans of Congo Caper or Rival Turf. They may be like, hey, I remember having that game when I was a kid. I didn't play these as a kid because, I was playing Mario and Donkey Kong and all that sort of stuff. It just feels like, they're scraping the bottom of the barrel on these things. There's 100 games that they could release on either platform that would do very, very well. But they always seem to go for these random ones, like the ones that don't cost them a lot to license to put on the service. Obviously, I'm not saying we're going to get the Final Fantasies from the Super Nintendo or the NES. We're not going to get Dragon Quest in there because Square Enix like to sell those games separately. But, at this point, it's like, unless they're going to start doing that, unless they're going to go to Capcom and say, hey, we'd love to put in some of your old, NES titles, like the Mega Mans, or hey, Konami, let us have Castlevania. Unless you're going to start doing that, I don't see why people should be paying money for this stuff. It just doesn't make sense to me, because why should people be paying money for games that, didn't make, a splash 30 years ago? and are unlikely to make a splash, today. It is what it is. As I said, I'm not a fan of them. And again, pinball, I love that game. That was one of my games growing up when I was 6-7 years old. But it's not a, hey, oh my god, this game's finally on the NES app sort of thing. It just doesn't appeal to me for that reason, and I don't think it would appeal to many other people for that exact same reason. Speaking of things that are not appealing, EA and DICE have confirmed that Hazard Zone is no more. Specifically, Hazard Zone, the mode inside of Battlefield 2042, is no longer getting any new content created for it. So the developers, during a sort of discussion video, which is here, I'll put the story in the chat. As part of this, where they're talking about some of the big enhancements to the various maps, so you can see if you're watching the video, some before and afters on Kaleidoscope. They're adding in a lot more, things, more obstacles, changing up sort of the way people can get around the maps by, making different pathways. But in the development update for the game, as the launch for Season 1 is coming up, they've announced that the Hazard Zone mode will no longer be getting new content. So what that means is that they will continue to release fixes and improvements to the stuff that's there now, as long as it's a required thing. So if somebody finds if you climb up to the very top of a singular flagpole that you can't normally reach without like launching up off 3 people and a zip line or something, something that's super really rare to get into, they're probably not going to worry about it. But fixes to maps that are sort of buggy or experiences, they're gonna touch that stuff. But there's no new maps coming for it. There's no new enhancements for it. The reason is they're just going to focus on the main Battlefield experience. So Breakthrough, Conquest, things like that. Battlefield Portal is remaining. That is being handled by Ripple Effect Studios in Los Angeles. So the DICE team in Stockholm will continue to focus purely on the main Battlefield experience, and Ripple Effect will continue to focus on Portal, whilst they're developing their own new game that they're working on. Sorry, when I said Portal, I ment Battlefield Portal. They're not making a Portal game inside of Battlefield. While that would be interesting, I don't think Valve would be okay with that. So yeah, so if you enjoy Hazard Zone, then what is there now is all you're ever going to get. Let's never say never. They may 6 months from now, when the game's in a better state, go, hey, let's do this. Let's fix some things up. But as it stands right now, they're not looking to make any new content for that mode. And I said it in my review, Hazard Zone is the weakest of them because people don't play Battlefield to play 12-man games. It's the same way that if you're playing Call of Duty, you're not looking for an interrogation simulator, or if you're playing Mario Kart, you're not looking to spend 4 hours customizing the engine size, with the tires and the brakes and all that. Some people may get a kick out of that sort of stuff, but it's not what people come to the series for. People go to Mass Effect for big RPGs, right? They're not going for council sessions, right? So it doesn't surprise me that the mode is no longer being dropped, but I honestly didn't think it would happen this soon. I honestly did think that after a year they may have said, hey, let's sort of leave it. We got 6 months. That seems pretty good for the game. Obviously, the development team have spent a lot more time providing hot fixes and such to the overall experience because of how, not broken. Broken's not the right word, but it didn't launch in the most welcoming of states. Let's put it that way. Obviously, when I reviewed it, we were playing on servers before there were hundreds of thousands of players. So, like, my server experiences was very, very different to what it was, once they were live. And obviously, once players from all around the world started getting into the game, they started finding things, because 128 players on a map, you have to sort of run all over the place to try and find things. So yeah, there was a lot more going on post the official launch. So, that's why my review is a little different for that. It is interesting, as I said, that they're doing it that way. But yeah, Season 1 is expected to launch sometime in June. Hopefully we'll get some details soon for that one. But, we'll have to make do with what we know at this point. Right, so moving on, it is time to talk Star Wars. So Star Wars Celebration kicked off this morning. May 26th in the US of A, or May 27th for us here down in Australia. I will preface this entire part with saying that, I'm very excited for some of the announcements that they've revealed. It is very, very cool that they're doing these things. But at the same time, a lot of the stuff that they've talked about is honestly just, it's cool, but they keep sort of hiding some of this stuff to be exclusive to those, who attend. And that is the thing that pisses me off about all these shows, all these conventions. They're like, oh, this is a convention exclusive. It's like, yeah, okay, so you're now penalizing your fans who can't afford to go. I say this, I go to E3. I realize I'm very fortunate to be able to do that, and I do enjoy going to E3. Now, E3 is not a convention like a PAX is. It was never that originally, and no matter what people will tell you about how, it needs to adapt and evolve and that's never... E3 was a trade show to begin with. It's sort of moved away from that, but it still keeps some of that there. Now, obviously, as I said, I go to that one, but I don't go to Gamescom, I don't go to Tokyo Game Show, I don't go to Gamescom Asia, which takes place in Singapore, and there are various other shows around the world that I don't go to. But in the same sense, Star Wars Celebration is on now. Disney have D23. There's was it MomoCon or whatever it's called in London. So there are a number of these, conventions around the world. And every time I see, the phrase convention exclusive, all I ever can see in my mind from it is that it's just penalizing those people who can't afford to go. So Star Wars Celebration, I could have been there this weekend if I really wanted to go, but it's always that cost factor. Does the cost of flights to another country, accommodation in that country, money for meals and drinks throughout the day, transportation around the place, and spending money at the moment with how flights are expensive because they're all the airlines are just jacking their prices up to recover from their pandemic shutdowns. We're looking easily, $3,000-$4,000 just to get there and stay there for 5 days. Of course, you've got to include your tickets to get into the convention, right? And then afterwards, they're like, "Oh, cool! Here's this $300 figurine. It's only available for 3 days, 4 days at the show. After then, too bad, so sad if you miss out." That's all well and good that they can do these things, but it just annoys the hell out of me that companies who have fans all around the world refuse to acknowledge that when they host these events. I'm forever on social media calling out Disney when they have these D23 events. So D23 is the official fan club for Disney because the Disney Corporation started in 1923. So next year the company will be 100 years old. What annoys me is they'll be like, "Oh, we're hosting, some special events," and they host them in Los Angeles, either at Disneyland or the El Capitan Theater, which Disney own in Hollywood, or they'll host them out at Walt Disney World in Florida, or they'll pick, random cities throughout the US. D23 Japan exists, but it's not operated by Disney. It's operated by the Oriental Land Company, who own and operate Tokyo Disneyland. But D23 do nothing in Australia. They do nothing in Europe. They do nothing in Africa. They do nothing in Asia, outside of Japan. So they do all these events for the Americans, but Disney is a global corporation. So every time I see convention exclusive, it just reminds me that these companies will host these events purely as a way to, share what they're offering to their fans, but only, the fans willing to spend the money to be there in person. I'm not saying that every single item that's developed for Star Wars Celebration for the shops needs to be available online. I'm just saying that, if you're going to develop a shirt that is made from artwork that was never released before, you've got Star Wars fans that have been there since May 25th, 1977. Maybe they would love this shirt, but maybe they can't travel because of an injury. Maybe they can't afford to travel anymore because life just took a hard turn. So they've been fans for 45 years of the franchise, but because they can't make it to the one show you do every year, every 2 years, you're penalizing them. So with that said, I'm showing the content from the show rather than talking about the show itself. I go to PAX Australia, I go to E3, and I'm very fortunate to be able to do that. Not everyone can even go to PAX Australia who live in Melbourne, right? Sometimes the ticket price of these events is just, out of their pocket, out of their price range. But every time I see convention exclusive items, it just infuriates me because it doesn't need to be that way, and I just don't understand why they keep insisting on it. But with that little rant over, let's move on to some of the news. Now, we're going to start off with some non-Star Wars stuff first, because Lucasfilm, even though if you say Lucasfilm, people go Star Wars, Lucasfilm also has, some other things. So they've got the Tuskegee Airman is a movie that they did. There was that singing Pixie movie. I can't think of what it was called now. It was one of those ones where they took, modern songs and then they threw it in a fantasy world setting. I have to look it up now because I honestly can't remember what it was called. It was a CGI movie that was done by George Lucas. There we are, movies. It was called Strange Magic. So George Lucas was the story writer on it, but Gary Rydstrom, who's done a lot of stuff for animation before, was the director. And yeah, it's a weird one because ILM did a lot of art for it, but it was done by Lucasfilm Animation, who people will know now for Rebels, Resistance, and obviously the Clone Wars. But as I said, they also have things like Willow, which we'll get into in a moment, and Indiana Jones. So at the showcase, so Lucasfilm hosted a showcase, sort of the first big event of the day. And during the showcase event, they released this singular photo from Indiana Jones 5, which still doesn't have a full title. It's just known as either the next Indiana Jones movie or Indiana Jones 5. It just shows Harrison Ford in the outfit. It's very, very cool. What also happened was during the sort of showcase, John Williams came out and played a few of the songs from Star Wars, but then he also pivoted to playing some Indiana Jones, which is when Harrison Ford walked out on stage to show off the piece of art and confirm that the movie will release in Australian cinemas on June 29th, 2023, so a year and change away still. It was also then confirmed that John Williams, who's celebrating his 90th birthday today, would be composing all the score for the next movie. So that'll be another series that he's, continued on. It boggles my mind that he's still making music, at his age. But he's not hauling around grand pianos. He's, coming up with melodies and writing them on paper. So it's probably something he can do very, very easily still. It was a very, very cool thing, to basically for him to be, celebrated by everyone in attendance. While playing, some classic music. But as I said, it was more about just showing off, the single piece of art from the movie. It does look cool. I don't know how excited people will be for it, because it's one of those things where you're either going to enjoy it or you're not going to enjoy it. I know far too many people rag on the fourth movie. I liked the story and I liked the premise. I just didn't like the overuse of CGI. I felt it was an insult to the series by removing, a lot of the practical elements that were sort of made the original three movies. I know people give it a lot of crap for going, oh, they put aliens in. It's like, yeah, the first movie had a box that melted the face off Nazis and summoned spirits to, you know, rip out the souls of other soldiers. So, you know, let's not worry about the MacGuffin of the piece. You know, the second movie was all about, you know, giant crystals that you protect villages that were stolen by, let's say, you know, Hindu adjacent people, you know, who would rip the hearts out of people. So, you know, the Indiana Jones movies have always had a MacGuffin. The Crystal Skull being one doesn't really, you know, doesn't worry me because I still enjoyed it for what it was. But yeah, so we don't know any details about the new one. We do know it's set in the you know, period of the Vietnam War. There was some footage of them doing some filming in Scotland, which was standing in for the USA, you know, as movies always do. The movie is being, you know, produced by Steven Spielberg, but this is the first one out of the 5 that he's not directing. So the directing job for this one has gone to James Mangold, whose most recent movie was Ford versus Ferrari. Ferrari versus Ford? I think it was Ferrari versus Ford. But if you're a comic book fan, you may know him from being the director of X-Men Origins Wolverine and The Wolverine with Hugh Jackman. So, you know, he's done some good big budget movies. He's done some interesting, not low budget movies. Ford versus Ferrari, whatever the order is for that. That wasn't low budget, but it wasn't obviously a big spectacle like Wolverine was. So he's definitely got, you know, the chops to cover both grounds. We just have to wait and see, you know, on how it will go in the long run. As for a trailer, there's no word on when that's going to happen. But, you know, given that the movie's not expected to release until June, if we're lucky, we may get one in November, December when Avatar drops. They may put a bit of a teaser out for that then. Or we may have to wait till, I think it's Ant-Man is in February now. So we may have to wait for Ant-Man to get a trailer then. But, you know, the earliest I think we'll see one would be with Avatar, but we just have to wait and see. Speaking of waiting and seeing, Willow is finally getting a sequel. So we've known this for some time, that Willow, the movie from 1988 starring Warwick Davis, was getting a TV series with director from the movie Ron Howard back producing this one with, again, Warwick Davis in there. You know, we knew it was in development. We knew it was coming. They were filming it. We didn't know when it was coming, but we learnt that today as well from the panel. And that is set to air starting November 30th. So this is sort of the holiday show from Lucasfilm for the year. What this means is that, you know, with Obi-Wan now having started today, we'll get into their next sort of project after that, but this is the one they're going to sort of wrap the year up with. We don't know how many episodes it is. We don't know if it's 6 episodes or 10 episodes or, you know, 50 episodes. We don't know. We just know it's going to start airing on the 30th of November. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to swap to the trailer. So I'm obviously not going to play the audio because, actually, no, we'll play the audio.
To be an empress.
And the unlikely that they'll strike before, but they won't because it's a trailer with talking.
There is a balance between all things. Light and shadow. Good and evil. When that balance is upset, the universe corrects.
The world needs you again. It needs your magic.
Into the unknown. That's where we must go.
So, I'll be honest, I vaguely recall the original movie. It has been, 34 years now, I should say. So I don't have the strongest memory of it for obvious reasons. But yeah, the series itself, I'm sort of excited for it, mostly because there's a lot that they can do, with it. As I said, so Warwick Davis is back, as Willow. So Erin Kellyman, she is in the show as well. Now, that's her here on the right, if you're watching the video. You may not know her name, but she was in Star Wars, or Solo, a Star Wars story, and she was the leader of the bandits that Han ended up working with against the bad guy. She was also the leader of the Peacekeepers in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Before she was unceremoniously shot by the can't remember the character's name now. It was Sharon Carter, but I can't remember what the informant or the traitor or whatever it was. But yeah, I think this is going to do very, very well. I think it's going to freak a lot of people out that, Lucasfilm, the people that make Star Wars and nothing but Star Wars, are doing something that's not Star Wars related. Obviously, it has a connection with Star Wars because Warwick Davis famously played, Wicket back in 1983 in, Return of the Jedi, a role that he went back to in The Last Skywalker most recently. If you've grown up watching the Harry Potter movies, he was Phileas Flitwick in those movies. He was some of the goblins. He was Griphook, for Gringotts as well. So he's had a lot of roles over the years where he plays somebody of short stature because of his physiology. But he always has fun with it. So he has a lot of fun with the roles that he's given. And Willow's the one that people keep asking for because it obtained sort of a cult status, if you will, from people, not because it was it was full of effects, it was full of wonder and everything, but more just because it was something a little different. It was like from the makers of Star Wars, so yeah, it is interesting. As I said, November 30th is when that's going to start, but we should probably hear more about that, say sometime in September. Speaking of what is sort of next from Lucasfilm, many people expected that The Mandalorian Season 3 would be the end of year show, but we now know that will air in February. So one of the things that they did during the panel is that they talked about the third season of The Mandalorian, which Din Djarin's big quest is. He has to sort of reclaim his honor because he removed his helmet to say goodbye to Grogu at the end of the second season. But they've decided, he's decided, hey, I said goodbye. That was what I needed to do at the time. It felt right. But in order to be a true Mandalorian, he needs to atone for the sins. The only problem is the only place to do that is on Mandalore, which we saw in the Book of Boba Fett. We saw the Night of 1,000 Tears. I think I got that wrong. It's the Night of 1,000 something. But that's when the Empire came in and basically bombarded the entire planet and destroyed everything. So Mandalore is not exactly a welcoming place to people anymore because of the Empire. Not because people are distrustful, it's because there's hardly anyone there because the planet is in ruins. As for a trailer, let's see, somebody recorded the video and put it up on YouTube earlier today. I did have it in the story, and as you can see, I even said for as long as it remains online. So they did sort of take it away. The problem that I have with, again, this, they've gone, oh, this is a convention-only trailer. It's like, but this isn't a convention-only show. This is a show that, millions of people around the world want to see more of, and they've put together a trailer. It went for like a minute and 10, minute 12. So it was a decent length. It wasn't like a 15-second clip or something. But for whatever reason, Star Wars, executives there have decided not to show this to the world for whatever reason. It's only if you're at the only at the show itself, and only at that specific panel. It's not as if it's on a TV on a loop anyway. But yeah, so I'll be honest, I'm hesitant to watch the third season of The Mandalorian because I think they've gone the wrong way by bringing Grogu back in. It made sense for the first season. You know, he was sort of adapting, trying to keep this kid alive. And then, you know, by the end of it, he was given the quest to return him to his own kind, which he did. But the problem is that entire sequence of events only takes place over a period of like 3 or 4 months. So we're now expected to believe that he's decided to take back the kid, essentially. Which is one of the things, you know, the Book of Boba Fett had 2 episodes where Boba Fett wasn't in it. You know, it'd be like writing a new Harry Potter book and not putting Harry Potter in it. Oh wait, they already did that with the Fantastic Beasts movies. But yeah, so you know, I'm Grogu didn't need to be in a third season. They could have done something differently by keeping, you know, the Mandalorian on his quest to reclaim his honor because of what he had done. But you know, they've now kept this kid in, which makes no sense to me. Grogu served his purpose, and I don't think the character needed to be around anymore. But that's me. I didn't want him back because I thought the arc that included him was done, and for what it was doing, it made sense. But I think because of the popularity of Grogu, they've decided to keep the character in, and I think that's just a bad decision. But let's be honest, you know, they flubbed Boba Fett. The show, you know, was honestly, it was not great. It wasn't horrible by any stretch of the imagination, but you know, as I said, they had 2 episodes, and Boba Fett only appears in like 20 seconds of the second of episodes, because it's all about the Mandalorian, which is technically, it says the Mandalorian season 2.5 essentially. The other thing too is, you know, when we saw Boba Fett, you know, when he made his grand return in the second season of the Mandalorian, you know, he kicks some ass with his stick and he's, you know, in his little black robes, and then, you know, he runs onto the Razor Crest and he steals his armor back, and then we see him lay waste to like half a platoon of stormtroopers. You know, he blows them up, you know, shoots them, you know, melees them, does everything, and he just like kicks ass for like 5 minutes straight. And then we're supposed to see him in better condition, you know, a few months later, you know, on Tatooine, and he gets his ass handed to him over and over and over and over again. It's just making no sense to me, you know, canonically, how he can go from being this like badass, you know, person to you know, sucking so hard. And what's worse is that where he fits in The Mandalorian season 2 is after he's met Fennec. You know, he saves Fennec's life, which we saw in the Book of Boba Fett. You know, and you know, she's, you know, kick-ass the whole time. So we see all that build-up happen in the Book of Boba Fett. We cut to The Mandalorian, we see it there. And then, you know, we go back to the Book of Boba Fett where you see him just being absolutely useless. It just made no sense to me, and I'm honestly just confused as to why they would do that. But that also then, as I said, helps highlight the fact that they've decided to do this with, you know, with sticking Grogu back in for a third season. I don't think it needs to be there because it just doesn't make sense in the grand scheme of things. But hey, you know, what do I know? I don't make Star Wars shows. But you know, hey, it may turn out to be okay, but I don't think it will. I think they're trying to milk the golden goose, you know, for another run, and I think it's kind of done. We saw it with Frozen 2. Frozen, you know, took the world by storm. You know, Let It Go was everywhere for you know, a year. You couldn't go to any sort of, you know, girl's birthday party without it being Frozen themed. You know, everyone wanted to be Anna and Elsa. It was everywhere. By the time Frozen 2 came out, people didn't care as much. It still did okay, but you know, it wasn't what people wanted. They didn't need a sequel because the first one was pretty much, you know, a great movie. So yeah, that's sort of what they're doing here. They're trying to milk something that's already sort of exhausted, and I don't think it's going to go well for them. Something that was new for the show was the announcement of Star Wars Skeleton Crew. So Star Wars Skeleton Crew is an all-new live-action show coming in 2023 and will star Jude Law. Jude Law is obviously, a pretty well-known actor. His most recent sort of series of roles that he's done is as Albus Dumbledore in the Fantastic Beasts series. What is interesting is the show is being created and produced by John Watts. John Watts is the director for the Spider-Man trilogy for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man Far From Home, and Spider-Man No Way Home. What is interesting is we know, very few details. And this is just the art that they've sort of released. It's literally just the logo with his face on it. But what we do know is that the show is set in the same time period as The Mandalorian and Boba Fett and Ahsoka, which is now in production. But it will focus on, a derelict ship floating sort of through space with Jude Law and a bunch of 11 or 12-year-olds. That's what they're sort of casting for now. It was sort of, the talk is that internally at Lucasfilm, they said this is going to be a show very similar to that of, an 80s adventure movie. And I've just sort of said like the Goonies. But they've also, what people have said after it was announced is that it's got kids in it, but it's not going to be a show for kids. This is not going to be, the PG live action Star Wars show. How this plays out, we don't know. As I said, John Watts is involved. Chris Ford, who helped write the Spider-Man movies, he's involved as well on this, as is Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. And I think, Jon Favreau's doing, The Mandalorian Season 3. He's working on that. Dave Filoni obviously worked on Mandalorian Season 3, but he's doing Ahsoka. They sort of lead them differently. But, they're both involved in that. Dave Filoni's helping creatively on some of the stuff for Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's not involved in it. Ahsoka, Mandalorian, and Boba Fett are all filmed in Los Angeles in the Manhattan Beach studio, whereas Obi-Wan Kenobi was filmed in London. So obviously he's not commuting back and forth between each studio every day, but he's helping out with decisions, things like that. Not in any great sense, but just support where they need it. I don't know if Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau can have a fifth show, sixth show technically, going at the same time. Not saying they're making 6 shows at once, but they've done 3 seasons of The Mandalorian. Sorry, they filmed 3 seasons of The Mandalorian, released 2. They've done the Book of Boba Fett. Filming for season 3 of The Mandalorian is done. Filming for Ahsoka is happening now. They've sort of done release 3, 2 are still in the works, and they're picking up another one. There's also the Rangers of the New Republic show that was supposed to happen, but that got canned after Gina what's her face came out as batshit crazy. So yeah, it's interesting that they're picking up another one. I'm hoping this is more just because it's being filmed in Los Angeles, or it's being connecting to the Ahsoka Mando world, and hopefully it's not just because they wanted to make something different. As I said, we don't know any real details about it apart from the the name and who's starring in it. The name may change. They may change it to something else. We've seen it happen before. But yeah, I don't know. It could be interesting. So we just don't know enough about it to say anything for certain. I am a little worried though that they're pushing some of this stuff too fast. We only learnt about the John Watts show, Skeleton Crew, just a few weeks ago. Taika Waititi's stuff is still happening. The Acolyte, which is the show from Lena... I want to say Headley, but it's not Headley. Lena something or other. That's set in the High Republic era. And that's going to be a very dark Star Wars show. But I do question whether or not it's going to be dark, or it's just dark for Star Wars. Kevin Feige came out before Moon Knight premiered and said, "Hey, Moon Knight, it's brutal, it's vicious, it's this, it's that." So okay, cool. It wasn't. We saw far more blood and gore in the Punisher series that Netflix produced. But the way Kevin Feige said it was going to be, the most gruesome, hardcore thing that we'd ever seen inside of, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is not true because, there's that one scene in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness that is very, very gory. So, yeah, I they say the Acolyte's dark, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, there's a lot going on. Obviously, Obi-Wan Kenobi just started today. The first 2 episodes are up now. We have our review for it up as well. We gave it an 8.5. It has, potential to do some really, really good going forward. But they've also, they've raised some things that are a bit questionable for me. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. But once Obi-Wan Kenobi is done, on August 30th, 31st, I'll check in a second, Andor will be around. So Andor is interesting. It is a prequel series to a plot hole filling movie. So there was the whole, how did the rebels get the plans for the Death Star, and how do they get them onto the ship that Leia was on, right? It wasn't a huge thing. They just needed to know how all this came to be. So what they had done was, they basically said, cool, this is a movie. It's a heist movie that puts into context how the rebels got the plans for the Death Star, which obviously we then saw the effects of in the original Star Wars movie, back in 1977. So it was sort of very much a plot filling movie. Not saying it's a bad movie. I enjoy Rogue One immensely. I think it is a fantastic movie. What I'm saying is that in terms of characters and stuff, it was designed to be done in a set way. Obviously, the end of the movie prohibits any direct sequels with those characters. So Andor is their solution. Andor is a show set 5 years before the events of Rogue One. So the Empire is still reigning supreme. To put it into context, Obi-Wan takes place 10 years after the events of Revenge of the Sith. And in this show, Luke is 10. Luke is 19, I believe, when we meet him in A New Hope, which means that, this show, Andor, takes place about 4 years after the events of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and again, 5 years before sort of the events of Rogue One and A New Hope, because they literally bookend into each other. What is interesting about this is that it is set to air in August, and it is 12 episodes long. All right, so August 31st forward. Andor is created by Tony Gilroy, who was the director for Rogue One, and Diego Luna, who played Andor, Cassian Andor in the series, is back again. Also, in the cast is Genevieve O'Reilly, who is the actress who brought Mon Mothma to life in Return of the Sith and again in Rogue One. She's back again playing the character. So Mon Mothma was someone we saw way back in Return of the Jedi back in 1983. She's the one that said very, very somberly, "Many Bothans died to bring us this information." So that's her. So she's in there as well. Stellan Skarsgård, who Marvel fans will know as Eric, the drinking buddy / pants, worrying, friend of Thor. What is interesting though, as I said, it is 12 episodes long. Now, we don't know how long the episodes are. We don't know if they're, 26-minute episodes like you would see on commercial television, or 40-minute episodes like commercial television, or if they're 50 minutes to an hour long each. We honestly don't know. That's sort of the part that's a little worrying. They've committed to 12 episodes for this season, but they haven't said how long these episodes are going to last, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But they've already confirmed that the second season is going to be filmed in November. So and that's going to be another 12 episodes. So we have 12 episodes this year, starting the end August 31st. So we're looking September, October, November. It'll probably wrap up like 2 weeks before Willow starts, and then in November they'll start filming the second season. Now they've confirmed that the first season will focus on the events of 5 years ago, basically say 1 episode per month of the calendar year. But then the second season will be the 4 years between the end of the first season and the start of Rogue One. So what is meant to happen is when we see Rogue One, when we see the end of Andor at the end of the second season, it will literally line up with where Cassian Andor is in Rogue One when we meet him there for the first time. So it'll be like, just roll straight into it. For this one, they did actually put out a massive trailer, so let's plop that on now.
They're so proud of themselves. So fat and satisfied.
They're everywhere. They're watching me now.
Soon enough, these days will end. There will be no rules going forward. People are standing up. That's what a reckoning sounds like.
So yeah, I'll be honest, I am very excited for Andor purely because of the period of time that they're setting it in. So the Obi-Wan series is great because it's very much set in that whole, the Empire's in control, so the bad guys, the good guys are on the back foot all the time. But this is, Andor is a show where the main character isn't a good guy. He's not bad, he's not evil, but for him, for Cassian, it's the means justify the end. So as we saw in Rogue One, he was very willing to kill, Geonosis' father, the designer of the Death Star, purely to ensure that he couldn't be taken by the Empire. Obviously, he has a change of heart and rah. But he's definitely more of a, hey, if I have to kill 100 people to keep this secret safe or to complete my mission, I'm going to do it because it needs to be done. So in terms of characters, Obi-Wan, he's very much a, I was a Jedi. I did everything that I was told I needed to do, and we were betrayed. My friends were murdered. So he's broken. Mandalorian, it's a show about a guy who takes bounties because he was brainwashed by a sect of a tribal sort of culture. Boba Fett, let's not get into that one. Ahsoka, we don't know anything about that one yet either. So this is sort of the one that will probably resonate with a lot more people. It's because, how often in life have you always been sort of pushed around, and how much do you take before you sort of push back? And that's what Cassian's doing. He's pushing back. He's becoming, the not the good guy, but he's fighting for something more than just himself. So yeah, it looks like it's gonna be very cool. As I said, it's gonna be one of those shows where its length could go against it. Marvel honestly has fumbled the ball on every single one of their series in terms of length. They seem to write their scripts as if it's a 2-hour movie, 2.5 if you're being generous, but then they stretch those things out to be, it's not 2 1-hour shows or 3 40-minute shows. They stretch it out to six episodes ranging from 35 to 50 minutes. So we always end up with periods in the middle where things just never move. WandaVision had it, Falcon and Winter Soldier had it, Loki had it, Hawkeye had it a little bit. They probably did a bit better there than anything else. And even Moon Knight had it as well. So Marvel's done this with these shows. We saw it with Book of Boba Fett. They fumbled it by sticking 2 Mandalorian episodes in the middle of a show for another character. So it worries me that 12 episodes is going to be either going to be 12 decent bits of TV, or it's going to be 8 really good ones and 4 fillers. And that again, it just worries me that they've said 12 because they're like, hey, 12 is a great number, let's go for 12, even if it doesn't really make sense in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, so there is obviously still 3 more days of Star Wars Celebration to go. How all that shakes out, we'll have to wait and see. I know Star Wars Hunters, which is the free-to-play game for Switch and mobile phones, is at the show. As I said, they've got a ton of exclusive merchandise for the convention, which they honestly need to fix up. That's just not acceptable these days. But yeah, we'll probably talk a bit more about Star Wars next week once we have more news to talk about. But that brings us to the final part of the show, where we're going to talk about the games coming out in the next sort of 7 days. So it is interesting. We only have a few, but they're sort of big ones. So on June 2nd, we're going to see Card Shark from Devolver Digital and Diablo Immortal release. So obviously Card Shark is PC and Switch only. Diablo Immortal is mobile phone and PC only. So if you're on PC, you're in luck, you got both. The obvious thing with Diablo, of course, on PC is that's a beta release. It's not the full release. It's only for mobile there. And Card Shark, obviously, there's a demo out for that as well. On June 3rd, Tour de France 2022 is coming out. That is just the next entry in that, cyclical series. And I use the word cyclical there because it is a bicycle game, so it just sort of made more sense. And then that's sort of really it. We have on June 3rd, a game from Mages. Mages is a developer that specializes in not visual novels, but sort of more just interactive novels. It's Loopers. Which has nothing to do with the movie Looper with Bruce Willis. That's where I got it mixed up. But that's the Western release of a game that has been released in Japan for a while. But we're also getting 5 Memories of My Time with You, which is based on the manga and anime, the Quintessential Quintuplets, which is the show about the 5 identical sisters that one guy has to tutor and he falls in love with one of them and blah 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 blah, usual anime trope. But yeah, so it's a very quiet first week of the month. As I said, we see a few more, June 10th, for example, which is, partway through the week after. It's 2 weeks from now. That one day we get, Demon Slayer on Switch, Mario Strikers on Switch, and The Quarry on everything else. So, it's a very, very, very big, sort of week that week. But this first week is going to be pretty quiet. That, however, does bring us to the end of another episode of the Maxi-Geek Show. You can catch us live every Friday at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, or you can catch the replay on YouTube the following day. If you do watch live, I hope you enjoy watching what we have to offer. If you do watch the replay, I hope you enjoy that as well. We will be back on Tuesday with the next installment of our James Bond series, where we're continuing to play through the console James Bond games in celebration of the character's 60th anniversary of his movie career. So it was 60 years ago, back in 1962, when Dr. No first released in cinemas. The books are obviously a bit older than that, but the cinematic adventures began in 1962. We just finished up GoldenEye Rogue Agent last Tuesday. That game obviously ended on a very big cliffhanger. They said, hey, we can make a series out of this. The game didn't sell well because it wasn't that good, so it's sort of left open-ended. But this coming Tuesday, we'll be starting on the last of the GameCube era games, so GameCube, Xbox One, Xbox Original, and PS2, with From Russia with Love, which is based on the book, based on the movie with Sean Connery. And for this one, Sean Connery actually came back in and recorded all new dialogue for the character to help flesh out, the gaming portion of the story. So that should be very interesting. We will be back next Friday, of course, with another episode of the Maxi-Geek Show. So until we see you online again next, happy gaming.